Welcome to Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. And today we're still in the middle of a series called The 7 Thorns of Life. And these thorns, they deal with Paul when he said he had been given a thorn in his flesh. And he prayed 3 times for God to take these thorns away. And God says, I'm not going to take these thorns away from you. It is for purpose. And even though a messenger of Satan was sent to buffet Paul, God would not remove the thorns from Paul's world. And so it is with so many of our thorns. And as God had instructed me to teach on the 7 thorns of life, he said, ask George what the 7 thorns of life are. And we were in prayer one day, and I said, George, I got to preach a sermon on the 7 thorns of life. I said, what are those 7 thorns? And George instantly rattled off relationships, finance, health, work, faith, the carnal battle of doing what you want to do, and the fortitude to be able to hold up while you're having the thorns. So today we're dealing with that 4th thorn of work. Now, the 2nd thorn was finance. That's different from work. Finance is money, but work is how you earn your money. And they're 2 separate things. You can sometimes have great finance, but you don't want to go to work. Or you can love your work and your finances are terrible. So they're 2 different things, and today we're going to be talking about that thorn of work, which is a thorn with so many people, because so many people, and let me tell you how you can tell whether or not your work is a thorn or not. It's how quick you would stop if you hit the lottery. And that'll kind of tell you really how much of a thorn your work is. You know, some of y'all, if y'all just came into some big money, you wouldn't even give your boss a 2-week notice. I'm not sure a lot of you would even go in and even tell your boss personally. You may just text them. So I ain't never coming back. So our work is something that we spend the majority of our waking hours doing. And when you don't enjoy what you do, it becomes a burden, it becomes a hassle, and it becomes a serious thorn when we cannot learn to enjoy our work. And if you can learn to enjoy your work, you'll never work a day in your life, because it's an enjoyment. You look forward to going to work. You look forward to doing what you're meant to do and destined to do and what you have to do. But we often have to go through a great mental change in order to be able to do that, because the majority of people in this country don't enjoy going to work, and they don't enjoy doing what they do. So how do we make this thorn? Because you got to work. The Bible says if a man shall not work, he shall not eat. So you have to work, at least if you want to eat. Now, in America, sometimes you don't have to work. You can go on and get on, all kind of stuff, not to work, and you can still eat. But the Bible says if a man shall not work, he shall not eat. God intends for you to work. There's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You, and it's talking about how to get fulfillment in work. And basically what it says is this: when you hear a lot of people say you ought to follow your passion. I don't tell people to do that. And the reason that I don't tell people to do that, and what the book says is this: the book says it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the majority of cases, because when they surveyed high school students, of those who had a passion, 75% of those passions were in the arena of sports, entertainment, and the arts. The problem is 75% of the passions was in sport, entertainment, and arts, but only 2% of the jobs are there. So if 75% of the passion is there and only 2% of the jobs are there, there's going to be a serious disconnect when you go out into the world and your passion is sports, entertainment, and arts. And I even had some of my boys, I had to talk with them. They were talking about the NBA. I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. See, Elijah is the best basketball player among the brothers. But see, Elijah's not going to make the NBA. I'm just going to be, I'm just sorry. And not only is see Elijah the best basketball player among the brothers, see Elijah has basically beat the vast majority of the third generation, the younger. See Elijah still whoop him in basketball. So he's good. But I had to talk to my boys. I said, look, Daddy just going to be honest with you about this. The probability of it, you are not going to make the NBA. So do not base your future, do not base your desires and your wishes by you going to be another LeBron James. That's just not going to happen. And I don't mean to bust your bubble, but I want you to be real about this thing. You just don't have the skill. See, Elijah is the best one in. And Josie said, I'm going to beat see Elijah. See, Elijah only wins because he takes me to 100, and I give out of energy before I can get to 100. So I'm gonna get this down, but you still not in the shape where you're going to make a living from the NBA. It's basically 2,000 people in this country who make a living from professional sports. So the probability, that's the number one. Folks want to be in entertainment, arts, and sports. That's where the passion is, but that's not where the earning power is. So there's a serious disconnect, and that's what the book talks about. So for most people, the passion that they think they have, the reality of it is they're just not going to end up working in that passion. So let me give you an alternative. Let me give you something that is going to be far more beneficial and it's going to be far more practical. Instead of doing what you are passionate about, be passionate about what you are doing. Let me repeat that. Instead of doing what you are passionate about, be passionate about what you are doing. And this is the philosophy that I have had all of my life, and it has allowed me to always enjoy my job. I remember some of my first jobs that I had. I've worked all of my life. I used to be a cashier in my father's drugstore, and I would stand there and do what they call ring the cash register, and I would just start seeing how fast I could process customers. And my hands would be moving like lightning over the keys. I would ring that cash, and you have long lines. I'd just be there all night long. I made it a point that whatever I did, I became passionate about what I did. I remember when my father forced me to get a paper route. I didn't want to throw papers because I didn't want to get up that early in the morning. I had to get up 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd take me up there to pick up the papers. I had to come back, throw the papers. I started around the block. I had 25 customers because that's how many customers were around the circle where we lived. And I said to myself, if I've got to do this thing, I might as well do this thing to the limit. I've been like that with almost every. If I got to do this thing, I might as well do this thing, because I'll tell you right now, a paper route was not my passion. It was not only was it not my passion, I did not want to do it at all. So instead of doing what you are passionate about, become passionate about what you're doing. So I said to myself, if I've got to have this paper route, let me have the best paper route in the city. So I ended up expanding that paper route from 25 customers that my daddy wanted me to do to where I had over 400 customers. And I would throw papers. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It would take me about 2.5 hours to go through all 400 of them houses. And at one point, I did not have a motorized vehicle. I rode a bicycle. So I said, if I've got to ride this bicycle, let me take this bicycle to the limit. So I had a 10-speed bicycle, and I had the pack on my back with all of my papers in it, and I'd go around and put the papers in all of the boxes. I said, let me develop my legs on this bicycle, because I got to pedal it anyway. So if I got to peddle it anyway, let me peddle it. You know when Martin Luther King said, if you're going to be a street sweeper, you need to be sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures so that when you die, they say, here lies the greatest street sweeper that ever lived. I said, if I got to pedal this bicycle, I got to a point where I could pedal that bicycle. And there were a lot of hills in Atlanta. So I had a lot of hills on my paper. I had some real steep hills. I got to the point where I could pedal that bicycle in 10th gear, which is the hardest gear all the way. I would start out from the house, I put that bike in 10th gear, and I never had to take it out of 10th gear. But my legs had become like iron. If I got to do this, let me become passionate of what I got to do. When I came back and I was working in the warehouse. We used to have distributed products all across the city. And trucks would come in the warehouse, and there'd be all these boxes you'd have to load, and there'd be 2 or 3 other guys working in the warehouse. And they'd always have hand trucks they'd take the thing off the truck, put them on a hand truck, and truck it down to the warehouse. I would never use a hand truck. I'd pick them up, and I'd haul them down, carry. I said, if I got to do this, let me exercise while I'm doing this. Other folk got to go to the gym. You got to get to the gym. You got to pay a gym membership. This is heavy. And I remember my record. I had 8 boxes at 25 pounds a box. And I carried 200 pounds down that ramp and would stack them down. I still remember that. I had 200 pounds, and I would take 200 pounds, take them down that ramp by myself. And all the other folk would look at me, you crazy? Man, you crazy? Why don't you just use a hand truck? Because I can see a higher purpose in this. You looking at it as something that you just get it over as quick as you can. I'm looking at this thing developing me. And I'm getting paid to get developed. See, if you can't do what you're passionate about, become passionate about what you do. And I can look at each stage of my life. In every job that I had to do, I would view it in that aspect. And I would simply become passionate about whatever I had to do. See, most people, generally, they try to adapt what they do to what they want to do. And sometimes you just can't do that. Sometimes you got to clean up your room. You just don't want to clean it up. Bottom line, you just don't want to clean it up. But if you change your mentality and just, figure out, if I've got to clean this room, let me clean this room like nobody's ever cleaned a room before. And you change your mentality about the thing. And it will change your whole spirit. It will change your results. Because trust me, people, there are going to be some jobs you just don't want to do. It's not your passion. I even would pick up trash along the street on where our office is located. I said, look, there's a whole lot of trash on this street. We're going to be the one company that cleans this street, and we go from one end to the other. The street is exactly 1 mile long, so we would start from one end and go all the way down and then come all the way back. It's a 2-mile loop. And each one of us would take a particular week, and one day a week we would go and pick trash up. I had a week, and I would pick trash up. It would take me about 2.5 hours. And I would have to stoop over and pick up trash about 500 times. And it would fill up about 4 big trash bags. And I didn't even have to pick up the trash. But I said, the street needs to be clean. And there's one thing about a leader, you need to be able to say, come on, not go on. So I said, let me pick up the trash. And can't nobody complain about picking up trash if I'm picking up trash. And not only would I pick up trash, now everybody else was gloved down to the limit, and they had this stick that you squeeze, and the arms would open up, and you could pick up the trash and you drop it in the bag. Then they had this thing you could roll the bag behind. Nothing wrong with that, because sometimes you need to make stuff as efficient as possible to handle where you're. That ain't the way I did it. I had my bag slung on my back, and I bent down and picked up every piece of trash with my bare hand. Now, Pastor, you picked up all that nasty stuff. Well, if you don't have any cuts on your hand, ain't nothing nasty. You just make sure you wash them and scrub them real good. I was scrubbing long before the pandemic came along. So when I finished that picking up that trash, I went in there and scrubbed my hands real good. But as long as you don't have any cuts on your hand, nothing you pick up gonna bother you. And there be some nasty stuff out there. But the thing about it is, if I'm gonna pick up this trash, I'm gonna pick up this, and I'm gonna work out while I'm picking up this trash. I had this big heavy bag on my back. I would squat down. I did 500 squats. And I would go all this pick, and I would drop down, pick up the trash, put it in the bag, pick up the trash, put it in the bag. I was the best trash picker up on that street. And I was the president of the company. And this is the point, and you can learn. I had a whole different level of mentality, even though I was a garbage man. You see, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it matters the spirit in which you're doing. And some folk can't, this just beneath me. This is beneath me to do this. That's why Jesus said, those among you who would be great must be the servant of all. And see, we want to start out just being the boss. We don't want to do a job that's beneath us. We want these highfalutin titles, these highfalutin jobs, everybody looking up, everybody respecting us all. I remember when recently the lead doctor, Anthony Fauci, he held a round table with a lot of the pastors in Atlanta, and Pastor James was on that round table. And I asked Pastor James, so how you get on that? You ain't no senior pastor. How you get on that? So Pastor James said, what happened was, I went, and it was actually a Thanksgiving food distribution. And it was me and a lot of other pastors were there. But most of the other pastors didn't want to lift any boxes. And the man in charge saw that I was working harder than any of the other pastors, just lifting the boxes, hauling this stuff. So when he got ready to ask somebody to come over in, he asked somebody who he knew wasn't scared to get their hands dirty, who would work, who it wasn't beneath to lift boxes. And sometimes you never know who's watching you. But Pastor James said, if I got to lift boxes, let me lift boxes like no one has ever lifted a box. He got that from his older brother, because that's the way I used to carry them boxes down there. It was the same way. It's the same principle. So people, when you change your mind about your job, and the Bible talks about how, just with work, you've got to work. There's no question about that. But when you work, if you learn how to work with a certain attitude, it'll just change your world. And sometimes we say, they ain't half paying me, so I ain't gonna half work. And you don't realize that sometimes your pay and your elevation will not go up because you ain't half working. And when you're not half working, nobody want to promote and excel as somebody who's not half working. We had an issue within Bronner Brothers not too long ago. And somebody wanted more money. And they said, well, before we do that, we're going to have a compensation committee. And the compensation committee is going to evaluate everybody in the company to see where everybody's salary is, to see if they're in line or out of line with standards. Pastor James, who did they say was the only person, the main person in the company who was more underpaid than anybody else in the company? Yeah. Me. They said, Nathaniel, you are more, with your qualifications, you are more underpaid than anybody else in the company. But I was still working, just as happy. I ain't complaining about my pay. And see, this is the thing about it. When you do what you're supposed to do, God has elevated. Now, see, I was the most underpaid person in Bronner Brothers, but I'm the highest paid person there, period, because I got my other company. This is the point. When you are faithful to another man's stuff, then God will be faithful to your stuff. But many of us say, I'm going to start my own business, and you're not faithful to the business you're in. You're not faithful to the other man, thinking that when you start your own, all of a sudden you're blessed. No, it's not. It doesn't work that way. When you are faithful to another man's stuff, When you start your own, your stuff start, because let me tell you something about those of you who think about just starting business. That stuff ain't easy. 80% of them fail. Business is not easy by a long shot. And when you haven't had work for another man, there's a spirit that goes with that thing. And it'll end up, it's going to put a curse on what you try to do. Because you're going to hire some folk just like you. You're not half working, and that spirit going to hit the same folk. And you're going to have some folk in your business just like you that won't have work. And it'll curse your business. So when we understand if we can just change our mentality from saying, I want to do what I love and what I want to do, to change the mentality, because trust me, the disciples probably did not want to do all the stuff they wanted to do. The stuff they had, they didn't want food out. Trust me, a lot of them disciples didn't want the food on casting out demons. I don't like the food with no demons myself. So a lot of that stuff, that's why Jesus said, that's why he got on and washed feet. See, there are some things that you may not want to do, but you gear your mind, if it's an honest job, you gear your mind, how can I readjust my mentality? How can I readjust my intellect? How can I readjust my energy so I become the best? That's why the book was entitled, So Good They Can't Ignore You. And when you become so good they can't ignore you, you start becoming elevated. There are basically three kinds of folk. There are three kinds of employees. The first kind of employee, they won't do what you tell them to do. That's the first kind of employee. The second kind of employee is a wheelbarrow employee. They will only do and only go as far as you push them. The minute you start pushing, they start moving. And then there's the rocket. The rocket moves on its own. The rocket moves up, and the rocket pulls everything with it. And there's a choice that you have to make. Which one of them three you going to be? The one that's not half doing the job, even when they tell you to do the job. The one that's only going to do jail. If the man ain't looking at you, I ain't doing it. If they not pushing the wheelbarrow, I'm not moving. Or will you be the rocket? And these things, they make a difference. And how your world will be on almost everything that you were involved with and everything that you touch. And many of us want our own. Let me read you that verse where it's Luke 16:10. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. See, y'all, some of y'all got a little job or what you think is a little job, and you're not faithful to that job. Say, I'm going to be faithful once I get a big job. Once I get a big title. Once I start making big money, then I'm going to do right. Once I get some big money, I'm going to start giving, and I'm going to start tithing once I make big money. No, you not. No, you not. If you're not giving right with little money, and the stats say this, you get stingier the more you get. If you're not faithful with the little, you will not be faithful with the big. So here the Bible says, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in the much. So if you crooked with a little bit, you're going to be crooked with a lot. If you crooked with $10, you're going to be crooked with $10 million. If you're faithful with a little, you're going to be faithful with a lot. If you're crooked with a little, you're going to be crooked with a lot. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? So I give you this advice about the thorn of work. And the thorn of work is truly a blessing, because I remember the stat that drug addiction is highest among two groups, welfare and trust fund babies. And they're two economic extremes, welfare and trust fund babies. Everybody knows what welfare is. Some people may not know what trust fund babies are. Trust fund babies, they born rich, and the parents may die or something, leave them all this money in a trust fund, so when they turn 18 or 25, they inherit all this money. Those are the two groups that have the highest rates of drug addictions. Neither group has to work for their money. So there's something about it, when you don't have to work for it, it messes you up. It really does. So work and the thorn of work, there's something about work that disciplines you. It makes you appreciate something. It makes you where you're not just throwing away stuff. But you do need to have the right spirit and the right attitude. So the two things, don't just try to work on something you're passionate about. Be passionate about whatever it is you're working on. And number two, work like it's yours. Work like it's yours. Work like it's yours. And I find myself, just even with the trash picking up, I was in New York and I was passing by, it was a bus stand bench. And I saw where people had left 2 or 3 bags of trash. They were fast food bags of trash. They just left it on the bench. Because I was so used to picking up trash on the street, I cleaned up the bench. I said, Pastor, that ain't your job. That ain't your job. There was something about it because I was used to picking up all this trash on the street. I picked up that trash and cleaned up that bench. In the world, you either are a dirtier or you are a cleaner, one of the two. Your presence in the world makes the world either better or worse. And sometimes it's manifested in these little things. It's in these little things. And I got a whole lot of spiritual revelation out picking up trash. One thing I found out about picking up trash, nothing was healthy in trash. All of the stuff on the trash was bad for you. Candy wrappers, fast food, French fry wrappers, condoms, yeah, some of them out there too, all kind of stuff. Cigarettes, cigar, all kind. There was nothing healthy. So I'm picking up all this stuff, and I hear God speak. Just as these people don't respect the street and the neighborhood, neither do they respect their own bodies. And I understood something. They wouldn't keep the street clean. They wouldn't keep themselves clean. So there's a principle. See, when you are faithful to another man's, when you're just faithful to something that's not yours, when you're just faithful to the street, when you're faithful to the bench, that thing brings a blessing on you. And it cleans you up, it straightens you up, it prospers you. And it'll be a spirit that will flow with you. So those two things. Sometimes you may not be able to do what you're passionate about, because some of us passionate about some stuff that's not going to feed us. You may not be able to do as a job what you are passionate about, but become passionate about what you do, no matter what it is. And then work like it's yours. Work like it's yours. Don't become a wheelbarrow person. And you only go as far as they push you. Work like it's yours. And these two principles will bless you and they will prosper you wherever you go and whatever you do. It's the thorn of work that was placed here by God. And in the proper attitude, it becomes a tremendous blessing for us all. I thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word. You can go to brothersoftheword.com. You can listen to the entire series called The 7 Thorns of Life. Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word.